When you start reading Berserk, you can tell that religion is a major theme of the story, but it only plays a peripheral role, at least initially. In fact, demons seem to be the main focus of the story, and the only reference to God was through the God Hand, which itself remains shrouded in mystery. The proper usage of religious iconography started in the Conviction arc, and ever since then, the Holy See of Berserk has become as much of a central character in the story as Guts or Griffith. On the surface, it's just like the Holy See of our world, a religious organization plagued by the same issues that most religious organizations find themselves facing. Corruption, exploitation, power politics, the usual. But it isn't the structure or the function of the Holy See that's relevant to the title of our video. It's its creation. Because when you drown out all the human elements of this religious order's daily functioning, the Holy See emerges as one of the most prominent motifs at some of the worst moments in Berserk, and often not on the side you'd think it would be on. So how exactly does the Holy See hold the key to Berserk's future? Let's investigate. But before we get into that investigation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Its imagery is eerily reminiscent of a certain falcon we all know, the Holy See's introduction. The Holy See was technically introduced in chapter 95 when we met Farnace and her Holy Iron Chain Knights, and it was no light introduction either. Miura dove straight into the reason why this religion might hold the key to unraveling Berserk's future by introducing the prophecy of the Falcon, on which we've already done a video. You guys should check that out. We'll get back to this prophecy later in this video as well, but what we want to focus on is the terminology it uses to describe the Bringer of Doom. The prophecy claims that the person who will bring down an age of darkness on the world will be the Falcon of Darkness, which seems to be an inversion of the Holy See's own symbolism because the See's primary insignia is a white falcon in flight. We first noticed this when we saw the idol in Farnace's tent, but we didn't think much of it back then because of, reasons. Our attention was drawn to it during the Conviction arc's journey into St. Albion because the insignia was more prominently featured over there. The Holy See's holy emblem shows a bright falcon in flight, as we've already mentioned, but the surrounding motifs are just as important, we'd argue. This falcon is perched upon a double helix that ends in orbs around its waist and a third at the base from which everything seems to spring forth. And if you guys know anything about Berserk's version of Hell, you can kind of tell where we're going with this. No real reason has ever been given for the Holy See emblem being a falcon in flight in the story. That's because we know next to nothing about the See's creation in the first place. We know the Holy See mirrors the Catholic Church, and that explains its dogmatic portrayal in Berserk, which seems to parallel the Salem witch hunts in the Conviction arc. We know that the See has departments like the Court Supreme, which passes judgment on most important religious matters, the Financial Administration, which is backed by Farnace's family and is the sole reason her dad has as much influence in the Sea as he does, and the Miracle Recognition Department, which deployed Farnace's holy order to go investigate their faith's most ominous prophecy. We know that torture is apparently espoused by the Holy See scriptures, as Mosgus and his disciples use their Bibles to justify their ghoulish judgments, and we know that the Holy See is the most dominant religion west and slightly east of the Kingdom of Midland. If the See is as dogmatic and as anti-heretical as they are made out to be during the Conviction arc, then how is it that it also contains a 100% accurate prophecy about the magical future of the world? The answer is simple in our minds: magic was involved in the creation of the See as well. It was founded around the same time that Geiseric's empire fell, and it has been systematically dismantling magical institutions ever since. Series creator Kentaro Miura used to always say that Berserk is a 1,000-year story, back when you could pin him down for interviews anyway, and our first hint that the Holy See figures into this plan comes in chapter 138. After Farnace witnesses Father Mosgus performing his brand of hardcore prostration, she brings up his knee injuries, which he incurred whilst affirming his faith for God. In response, Mosgus tells her that he had started losing feeling in his legs a long time ago, but that this pain, especially inflicted upon him within the Tower of Conviction, was more like a blessing to him than anything else. He then regales her with a short tale about a sage from 1,000 years ago. Apparently, back in Geiseric's heyday, there was a certain sage who, displeased with Geiseric's extreme methods of conquest, began proclaiming his sins to God daily. Geiseric allegedly had this sage imprisoned within the Tower of Conviction, and ordered his brutal brutal torture, but the priest endured in his proclamations until an angel was made to descend for his sake. Mosgus drops the story there and draws a parallel between the sage's torture and his own pain due to performing prostrations as a sign of their unbroken faith in God. This also seems to suggest, though, that the sage was somehow connected to the faith of the Holy See. Longtime viewers of our channel will know that we think the sage is, spoiler alert, the God Hand Void, but let's keep that aside for now. The second hint we get regarding the Holy See having risen up in the aftermath of the downfall of Geiseric's empire is what Shirke says to the priest of Enoch Village after performing the formation of the Four. Other than schooling adults on the actual point of faith and worship as a 13-year-old, at least according to the Berserk guidebook, Shirke also claims that the four elemental kings are the same as the cardinal angels recorded in Holy See scriptures. She says that no matter how one tries to twist faith to their ends, God's name belongs to God alone, and that the spirit world existing was not a matter of perception, it was a truth that the Holy See chose to ignore. The priest realizes the truth in her words when he lets go of his rigid worldview for a moment and sees a troll's body being incinerated within the light of the formation. But the real meaty part of this interaction comes next. Farnace asks Shirke why the Holy See's mantras do not hold the same power as the ones she was using at that moment, and Shirke says it's because the Sea had a centuries-long pattern of actually trying to suppress spiritual magic instead of embracing it. A church, according to Shirke, was nothing more than a sanctuary where people gathered to commune with angels or spirits. A magi built that sanctuary in their own minds, which is why spiritual perception came so easily to them. Moreover, the Holy See's churches were specifically erected over locations that never used to be shrines dedicated to the native nature spirits of the land and sea and sky. The Church of Enoch Village stood upon a shrine dedicated to an ancient water spirit called the Lady of the Depths, whose power Shirke borrows to literally wash away the trolls raiding the village itself. The spirit's power is such that Shirke loses herself in a trance, and even Guts is amazed by the torrent of water the little girl was able to summon all by herself. But this whole interaction tells us that, for some reason, the Holy See has been indoctrinating its followers to forget about astral creatures and the astral world for nearly 1,000 years, despite acknowledging the four elemental kings as the cardinal angels of their faith. For some reason, a sage that was tortured 1,000 years ago by an ancient ruler seems to have inspired the Holy See's doctrine of punishment, and for some reason, the insignia of their faith and the object of their most ominous prophecy seem to point towards the same person, and that is where the Holy See becomes so important to Berserk's future. Why the Holy See was created specifically for Griffith's Age of Darkness, and how it might hold the key to defeating him as well. So keep everything we've told you about the peculiarities of the Holy See faith in your mind, and now listen to their most important prophecy. The revelations say that when the sun dies 5 times, a red lake will appear to the west of the city with a name both new and old. It is proof that the 5th angel will alight. The angel is the Falcon of Darkness, the master of the sinful black sheep, the king of the blind white sheep, the one who shall call upon the world an age of darkness. This prophecy has come true as of chapter 372, word for word. Following Griffith's eclipse in the lake west of Midland's borders, which was the 5th of its kind, he was incarnated in a body of flesh at St. Albion, and has since triggered the great roar of the astral world and united humans and apostles under his leadership in the city of Falconia. It's kind of crazy to think that for a religion that gets so much wrong about the astral world, the first thing it was introduced to us through has held true over all these years. But we don't think that this is a coincidence. Causality, as you guys already know, is a spiral and not a circle. And the spiral of the Holy See began 1,000 years ago when King Geiseric was defeated at the very first eclipse and transformed into the wandering wraith that is the Skull Knight. The idea that the sea has existed for 1,000 years has been alluded to in the series enough times for us to call it canon. Now, if the Holy See rose up in the aftermath of the fall of Geiseric's empire, then it makes even more sense for its insignia to be a falcon of light in the middle of flight. Because as we learned in chapter 83, the idea of evil has manipulated world history for 1,000 years to prepare the proper context for Griffith's reincarnation. With Griffith, his hand of God became complete, and if you take the idea of evil to be canon as well, like we do, then the thought of the Holy See Sea itself having originated from someone who was likely under its influence goes from being a pipe dream to a very real possibility. And surprisingly enough, we have an example for such a person from the main story as well. Sonia. Sonia is someone who was introduced with a heightened sense of astral perception. She has used her power to show us that she can do telepathy without the need for a spiritual link, like Shirke does with her hair, and she has even given out accurate prophecies, like the one pertaining to the Falcon of Darkness. Sonia predicted that Zod would meet Guts once again at Britannis, and would be forced to choose to either fight him or ally with him in a critical moment. Turns out the Immortal One chose the latter, as he took Guts' assistance in taking down Emperor Ganishka. But the real important thing to note about this prophecy is the state in which Sonia delivers it. She seems almost as if she's possessed by some other entity when she delivers her prophecies, and when she comes back, she can recall what she said, but can neither explain nor elaborate upon it. And as of late, she has become a high-ranking official in the Holy See, designated as the Falcon's medium who delivers oracles that save refugees' lives and helps funeral goers find the souls of the loved ones they've lost. Most characters in Berserk seem to parallel someone from 1,000 years ago, and if we apply that logic to Sonia as well, then it would only make sense that someone like her, who has immense powers but isn't entirely sure what they mean, might have existed 1,000 years ago too. That oracle could have been the one who recorded the four kings as mankind's cardinal angels and also wrote the prophecy of the Falcon. But then, owing to their ignorance about what they were witnessing and writing, they couldn't realize that the Falcon that symbolized their faith was the very thing that would bring about the dreaded Age of Darkness. We think that the ancient oracle must have been just as ignorant of the Holy See's true purpose of creation, because despite their writings acknowledging the wonders of the world, they don't seem to have been translated as intended to their audience. The Holy See, as we've mentioned, has been systematically suppressing and exterminating opposition to their rigid faith for nearly a millennium because of how dogmatic it is. They've built powerless churches upon actual holy ground and promoted torture, which only serves to make a person's dead spirit restless and cling to the shallows of the interstice instead of passing away like they're supposed to. It's almost as if someone was already prepping for Griffith's incarnation all that time ago. And if that's so, then somewhere out there must also be a prophecy that tells us how this story ends. Berserk is all about stating the obvious openly, but showing its consequences over time. We heard the prophecy of the Falcon for the first time in chapter 95, and saw it fully realized in chapter 307. We don't even know how many chapters there are going to be overall, so it's entirely possible that we might uncover another ancient oracle just yet. But either way, it's clear that this religious structure, which has specifically served Griffith's ascension to becoming master of the universe, will also ultimately hold the key to his downfall. Whether that happens through another prophecy, this time about a true Falcon of Light, or a false prophecy, or through the skepticism of the Holy See that might end up exposing the truth behind everything Griffith has accomplished so far, is all that remains to be seen. Marvelous verdict. But as for this video, that's gonna have to be it. The Holy See was one of those innocuous additions to Berserk that most of us took as innocent world building when it was introduced. Now, it's grown into a central pillar of the Berserk-themed scrapbook, and the story is better off for it in our opinion. Before his passing, we are sure that Kentaro Miura had a great message about the grace of God hidden somewhere in his epic dark fantasy series. But now that he isn't with us anymore, the duty of bringing that message to us falls on the shoulders of Kuji Mori and Studio Gaga as a collective. So far, they've done a great job of remaining faithful to Miura's original story, and we have full confidence that they will continue to do so in the future as well. Chapter 373 comes out on May 26th, and while we don't think it will contain any massive revelations about the Holy See and its connection to Berserk's story, at this point, it's anyone's guess. But what do you think is the ultimate role of the Holy See in Berserk? Are they just there to show you the ineffectiveness of religion? Or is it supposed to show you the opposite? Or is its purpose something entirely different? Let us know in the comments section down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.